outside. It's such a pretty morning, isn't it?
Perfect fall morning, yeah. Although it's not fall yet, so it's still a perfect summer morning.
I have got to interrupt you right now.
Sorry.
Richard Hack, thank you very much. We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center, where I understand, do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment.
Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago.
What was unbelievable was the amount of fire. It was a big ball of fire that just went up. And I looked around at people. We were all horrified.
The building.
Oh, another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on the shot.
Oh my.
Something else has
You know what?
and
We
that
just
looks
saw
more
a
like
plane
747.
circling the building. I'm gonna go, Jennifer, did you see this happen?
Hello?
Did you just see this happen, Jennifer?
Matt, I've never seen any. It looks like a movie. I saw a large plane, like a jet, going immediately headed directly into the World Trade Center. It just flew into it, into the other tower, coming from south to north. I watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center.
You can see fire and flames or
Given the
smoke
time that this
billowing
has
from
happened.
that
Does he have any
tower.
information
They're
about what
looking
kind
at
of plane it
dramatic
was?
pictures
Does
of
he
New
tell
York's
us any
World
more
Trade
details?
Center. It
How
appears to be a
long
large
has it
plane. It
Where
could
a
be
short time ago, we were
right
told
there.
that a
Needless to
plane,
say,
even bigger,
Crashed
flying
right
into
into
the
the
upper
speculation
floor
side of the
of
World Trade
After
Center.
that,
West World
from
Trade
the
Center
eyewitnesses
was the
with
center
whom we
of a
spoke.
terrorist bombing some years ago. So the questions have to be asked, was this purely an accident, or could this have been an intentional act?
Well, I was actually up in Maine at my camp when I heard about it, and it was really kind of strange. I got up in the morning and I got in my van to go to the store, and I heard on the radio they were saying how a second plane had hit the tower, and I had no idea what they were talking about.
The way I heard about the attack, I was in the office. I had gotten in the office early to actually work out in the gym. And my mother actually called me and said there's been a horrible accident. A plane has crashed into one of the World Trade Center towers.
I was meeting with my counterparts in aviation, in the port department, for a regularly scheduled meeting. And we were downstairs on the concourse level of the Trade Center. And all of a sudden, in the middle of our meeting, chaos seemed to break out. And we looked up and people were running and screaming and yelling. I went upstairs to try to go to my 64th floor office, but couldn't because the elevators had already been shut off and there clearly was a major incident in the building.
When I first heard about the event, my reaction was one of disbelief.
One of the things was kind of an ominous feeling of knowing there's a bunch of guys that are running into that place, and just a fear for what the future held.
They were still digging through the rubble, even though it was 2 months later. It was November. They were still digging through the rubble, and the crews that were working there, you could just see that 1,000-yard stare in their face, and that's something you'll never forget. The windows were blown out. Buildings that were still standing looked like it was a war zone. It was very devastating to see.
At that point, when the second plane crashed, people in the office, management people in the office, were already aware that there was a hijacking. They obviously didn't know how that was going to turn out. They didn't know they were going to crash the planes into the towers. Literally seconds after we saw the second plane crash into the tower, over the PA system, they called all agents and support people to our conference room. Drop what you're doing, get up there immediately. And that whatever you had been doing up until that moment, you weren't doing anymore. Everyone in the office, agent and support, became a counterterrorism agent or support person.
The second building that was hit by the plane has just completely collapsed. The entire building has just collapsed, as if a demolition team set off. When you see the old demolitions of these old buildings, it's folded down on itself, and it is not there anymore.
That should be it.
It has completely collapsed.
The whole side has collapsed?
The whole building has collapsed.
The whole building has collapsed?
The building has collapsed.
When the first tower collapsed in front of us, it was like 100 sonic booms. It was so loud, I went deaf. I couldn't hear nothing. And then came that dust cloud. The whole ferry shook and went from side to side.
The nucleus of the New York Firefighters were, many of them were were at ground zero. If a brother from your house had fallen, some of the majority of those guys would have been at the funeral, but the hundreds and thousands of other members that were close, I think a big percentage of those guys were there, what they called working the pile. We, I think, filled that void for them, because it is something where a good showing is what they deserve.
343 brothers died that day, and then along with the 3,000 plus civilians. And it's just, every year that goes by, it just reminds us how we can be attacked at any given time.
There was a group of us that went down there. We felt that it was just something we could do and help, and they were looking for firefighters to help with the funerals. So we all got together and decided to go together and help out as much as possible over there.
After we did the funerals out at Staten Island, we had talked to some of the New York guys and we expressed some interest in trying to get to the site and into that area. And it was just, as far as you could see, were just rows and rows of chairs, and mostly what I would consider New York guys, by the look of their turnout gear, and the quietness. I remember specifically standing next to a guy that was seated, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and it was a pretty powerful moment. It was something I'll never forget.
At the time, we didn't really know what to expect. We had seen it on TV, heard about it on the news, but it was kind of hard to formulate in your mind actually what you would see when you got there. And what we did see wasn't anything that I could have ever imagined. It was so much worse than what I could have ever imagined it being.
I personally had 12 staff who perished that day. Close, dear staff, every single one of them I knew their families, I knew their children, had worked with them for decades.
It was really my first funeral on the job, so it was an experience like no other, because we were, there was 1,000 people, Mayor Giuliani, all the dignitaries from New York, and then tons of people. Little kid carrying his father's helmet. It was kind of heartbreaking.
When we got there, it was a lot different than what we expected, but we expected coarse sadness and maybe things that, we didn't want to see, but not sure what we were expecting.
It was like you had a big scrap pile of metal, and the buildings were around it were all trashed. All the windows were blown out, all the buildings were cracked, and even some of the debris from the towers were almost taller than some of the buildings that were there. That's what really got me. I was thinking about what the families were going through, the mothers, wives, husbands that lost their loved ones during that time. Not only the firefighters, but everybody, all the civilians that had lost their lives too.
We went to the west side of Manhattan, and I see these ladies over a distance. I see these ladies with strollers. They're at the Battery Park seawall. I made a hard right to the starboard side, and I went and I nosed up along the seawall, and we were telling them to drop the babies, just drop the babies, leave the carriages there, drop the babies, we'll catch them. And there were some passengers helping us, and they were dropping the infants to us, and then the ladies climbed over the wall, and we were helping them down.
dying. I just got a report from the director of Morgan Stanley. 78 seems to have taken the brunt of the stuff. There's a lot of bodies. They said the stairway is clear all the way up, though. All right, 10-4, Scott. What floor are you on? 48 right now. All right, keep walking. We're coming up behind you. 15 to 15 roof. 15 roof. We got reports of another incoming plane. You may have to take cover. Stay in the stairwell. 10-4. All right, Tommy, listen carefully. I'm sending all the injured down to you on 40. You're going to have to get them down to the elevator. There's about 10 to 15 people coming down to you. Okay. All right, Tommy, it's imperative that you try to get down to the lobby command post and get some people up to 40. We got injured people up here on 70. If you make it to the lobby command post, see if they can somehow get elevated past the 40th floor. We got people injured all the way up here. We got two isolated pockets of fire. We should be able to knock it down with 2 lines. Radio that. 78th floor, numerous 1045 call lines. Stuck in the elevator shaft. You're going to have to get a different elevator. We're chopping through the wall to get out. Guy 7 ladder 15.
It seemed like during that period of time and for quite a while afterwards, people were kinder, more thankful for things we had, for relationships. And it was a time when people were a little gentler with each other, it seemed like, and it kind of struck me. That was a nice thing that came out of this, of all the horror.
People were ready to help in whatever way they could. What can I do? How can I help? What do we need?
I've always tried to remember that, to put it in perspective. You shouldn't be afraid.
I think everybody becomes a little more patriotic when they have 9/11 thoughts go through their head. You know, a lot of people complain about what's going on in the country, but we're still the best country in the world, and we should protect what we have.
I've thought about this a lot over the years and really hope that we never have to see anything like it again.
A lot of people sent me letters, you know, thanking us for coming back. You know, they knew we didn't have to. You know, we went back and we got them because that was the right thing to do. We stayed together. We put up the Freedom Tower, showed them that, you know, we're still alive and kicking. We're not done yet, and it'll be a long time before we are done. Never forget the people, the innocent people who perished that day. Not only the policemen, not only the firemen, but just everyday, ordinary people that were there.
Never forget that we are a nation of one.
Never forgetting, to me, means that we don't just forget these guys that have passed on, these people who we've lost.
Never forget, to me, is about the victims, the police officers, the firemen, the emergency medical technicians, and their families.
We should not forget what happened on that day. Don't forget the people who perished on that day, whether they be civilians, firefighters, police, and not to let it happen again.
A fireman's going to go into a scene, whether it's going to possibly could lose his life or not, or her life or not, it doesn't matter. They put themselves second behind the greater good.
Never forget all the brothers we lost that sacrificed their lives.